Good afternoon. It is 1:30. We're here for our budget workshop. We'll reconvene the meeting. We're waiting for Tim. And while we're waiting for Tim, we can say the pledge. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. There he is. So, Tim, we've already reconvened the meeting, said the pledge. Sorry we didn't wait for you on that, but we figured we'd get right to work now. You ready? Getting there?
Not sure if you've had a chance to see the email from Margot that she had sent, and so I have that printed out that I was going to hand out.
You didn't get it? Oh, okay.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks.
Oh, okay.
So part of that I handed out was, it was related to the positions we were discussing yesterday. There was some on the commissioner's positions as well as OPD, which is, we left off with the OPD discussion, and there was a resolution that was passed that she included, as well as just some of the duties regarding that position that are all in that, all are in that. And I just want to make sure that you had that available to you for today's meeting.
And Chair, permission to speak when I get the opportunity.
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez. Go ahead.
In regard, because we're talking about OPD, I'm going to just read this email verbatim from Whitney Connor, who manages their budget for OPD. She sent me a email this morning because obviously she was watching the budget. She said, "Good morning. Per our conversation yesterday, based on the line of questioning from the county commissioners at yesterday's budget hearing, I've attached the approved resolution. The board approved our office the opportunity to hire an applicant at grade 20 or 21 on September 13th of 2023. Therefore, I do believe, based on the prior approval, that even if the board declines to appropriate funding in the initial 2024 budget, when we do locate a qualified applicant, would be requesting the appropriate additional funding accordingly. if said candidate is determined to meet the qualification necessary for grade 21. At the present time, this position is vacant. If you have any questions, let me know. So the board did take action on that. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. And she reminded me, obviously, this morning.
Okay. Alrighty. So do we want to continue where we left off yesterday?
Yes, and that was on the public defense position, so,
But it did say 20 to, or 21, so
20 to 21, and
we've already okayed that.
right, and the premise of it was it hopefully easier to recruit somebody, just market pressure on wages and the ability to recruit, and really the stipulations are a bit higher than a prosecuting attorney coming out of college. You know, they have to have certain felony level qualifications, so that's sort of the reasoning.
Yeah.
so if that's a yes based on prior resolution, then I can put down yes on this and move on to the next one.
Yep.
The prosecutor one that we had spoke about yesterday, I already had a yes on that one.
Yep.
Moving down the line, there's the sheriff. They were requesting some, this wasn't in the preliminary budget, it was a more recent request that was made a week or two ago regarding deputy positions that they were requesting to fulfill the bailiff issue that's ongoing that's starting as of December 1st in Superior Court. And the request for that was $232,854. They had proposed also offsetting that by a reduction in how much we pay Superior Court. I think that's probably more of a contract amendment type thing. I don't know that we can just start paying them less all of a sudden without some discussions on that. But the request for positions by itself is $233,000.
So do we understand that correctly then that's a wash with Superior Court?
I mean, I think we would have to, I think it would be a contract issue. I think at this point, we've agreed to pay what we've agreed to pay. And so we'd have to probably change how many people we're funding or whatever. I think that's probably a contract thing. I don't know that it to be the case that it would be a wash. At this point, I think the question is funding these, and then I think we'd have to address the Superior Court side of things probably at another time. So this right here would be an increase to the budget of $233,000.
Commissioners, this thing's tight as it is now, and now we just got to add 233,000.
So based on what we were told yesterday, there's a statutory duty for the sheriff's office to provide security in the courtrooms. So if we assume that that's accurate, I have no reason to think it's not, and the state legislature has said that the bailiffs shall no longer carry firearms, I think it poses the question, what is adequate security in the courtrooms? Is a bailiff by him or herself unarmed adequate? I don't think so. And I'm not even sure that their bailiff duties would allow that. So it seems to me that this is another case of unfunded mandate from the state. It's indirect. They took away a function in the courts and then pointed to a statute that says the sheriff now has to do it. By the sheriff's analysis, if he provides deputies to be in the courtrooms, they won't be on the roads of Franklin County. I don't know how you don't fund it.
Correct. I added this one on after the meeting because it's something that came up late in the budget stuff, and so it wasn't on the preliminary requests or anything. So I wanted to make sure that I just didn't want to omit it from any discussions that we had.
Is that an accurate estimate, or?
That was a number provided by the sheriff's office. I haven't dug into it at all. That was the number they gave.
Chair, can I request Marcus Connor, Commander
Absolutely.
Connor, come up if he's willing?
Good afternoon.
Commander, in terms of manpower, can you remind me, are you thinking this is overtime personnel, or, I mean, ultimately, is there training involved with the intent to get more deputies, or how do you intend to man it?
So what this amount would pay for is one full-time position that's fully outfitted, fully trained, that would essentially be here committed 40 hours a week. And then the additional would actually be overtime backfill for those times where you need more than one, or those times when that person's off and we need somebody here. So it's both. It's having a committed person here that is their sole duty is to be here in the courthouse, and then that necessary backfill overtime that would also inevitably happen.
For the overtime piece, and I guess even the other side, was the benefit impact factored in as well?
So we used, basically, we have a rate in the sheriff's office for contract work that's $80 an hour, which generally covers wages, benefits, use of equipment, all that stuff. So that's the number we used. Now, obviously, there's some unknown variables here. Today, there could be one courtroom. Tomorrow, there could be 3 courtrooms in use. So to be able to say exactly how many hours we would need in 2024 is just impossible. So we're just kind of using some historical data on what generally it looks like, spread out over the year. But there really is just no crystal ball that's going to tell you exactly how much you would need for manpower throughout the year. So,
For these security positions, is it possible to hire a retired police person to take the
let me-
duty
let
of
me s-
security in the courtroom?
yeah, let me start with the caveat that the sheriff would have the ultimate authority on deciding whether that would be possible or not. I will tell you that although that historically has been the case in a lot of places, I think what you're seeing from the judge's decision is the reality that we just can't keep doing that anymore with the mandated training
When
and
these retired police
qualifications.
officers have the required training already in place?
Well, it's not about the training necessarily that you have gotten. It's about the ongoing, continuous training as well. So there would still be that requirement that they have to maintain that. The other side of it too is by working as a sheriff's office employee, that would significantly affect the pension that they were receiving for being a retired law enforcement officer. So that would make it quite cumbersome to actually find somebody willing to do that was already retired, because they would automatically be put in back into the left system, and you can't pull out and put in at the same time. So it would effectively turn their pension off to come back. So that would also kind of be a factor in whether that's feasible or not. So, I mean, unfortunately, for many years, I think we've found a cost savings way of doing this, but with the changes to our profession over the past several years, we're just looking at, whether it's feasible, the risk management side of the people that you're putting in these roles with the authority that they're being given, and then, what position does that put the county in when there's questions about any, actions that they're taking. there's a lot of factors where we can't look at the past as an indication of how we move into the future on this stuff.
So the courtroom security, you're asking them to be just as trained as a deputy that's out on the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And-
Because those bullets are just as real and those guns are just as real as the guys out on the street.
How do they get the guns into the courtroom when they have to go through security?
I'm talking about our personnel that would be armed and uniformed. And I mean, I don't know that this is the proper forum to discuss any potential lapses in security we have here in the courthouse. But I would certainly, have that conversation with you offline.
I guess you would think, is there a way that they can have a training program that's basically just for courtroom security, just as if they were bailiffs? And
If the state of Washington were to decide that's a direction they want to head, I'm sure they would be willing to do that, but that's something we have no control over.
sure,
We
I
have,
just didn't know if that was an option, because
yeah.
you're asking us to spend money we don't have.
Right.
And
Yeah, and I will tell you with, the way that the sheriff's office is set up, we're bound by, civil service laws
Right.
that tell us the type of employees we can have and the classification that they need to be in. And there is no exception for how you would have somebody in a different type of classification. Civil service is pretty rigid in the amount of people that you can have outside of those classifications that they've established. So that would be a difficult thing to get an armed, commissioned sheriff's office employee that did not fall within the civil service categories of a deputy with that full training and full qualification.
Commander, personnel-wise, you guys are just as strapped as anybody else when it comes to manpower. Would you rotate? I'm assuming a younger deputy that's good to go, wants to be out on the road, doesn't want to be strapped to the courthouse. Would you think that a person kind of up, later in their career this would be a good duty for them? What would be sort of the rotation methodology? Would you put somebody in the academy really quickly? And so basically, I guess what I'm asking is how do you replace the person that needs to provide the primary security?
So it would, our plan at this point is we would essentially put it out to our existing deputies to say who's interested in this. Now, typically, these types of positions, somebody with more seniority is going to be attracted to this based on the schedule, workload, that kind of thing. So we would then gauge that interest, have an informal interview process, look at their qualifications. But it's our intent that we would actually have a person that this is their primary responsibility. It would not necessarily be a rotation. We want that person to be doing a lot more as part of the holistic courthouse security elements. So they would be building relationships, looking for those security vulnerabilities, addressing them. The communication between the courts, we want that to go to a designated person so that relationship can be built. So we would not be necessarily rotating people in and out of that very frequently.
Not much can be said.
So I'm pretty sure I heard one yes on that.
So that amount is just an estimate of what they think it's going to cost with one full-time employees and one full-time employee, and it must be a lot of overtime hours in there.
765 hours of overtime.
So this is effectively more than one FTE, has to be. You have multiple courts, you've got to have other deputies covering the other courts, so there's a cumulative overtime, and I'm just taking a stab at it, but I'm going to guess it's probably, when you roll it all up, it's the equivalent of about 1.5 or 1.7 FTE, somewhere in that window, simply because we rarely have one courtroom operating. The minute you go to two, that's twice as many. So you get to 1.5 pretty fast.
And the benefit of obviously using overtime, indicating however, the downside, and I think I forwarded kind of an overall snapshot of our staffing and some of the overtime's not just something we're going to be able to rely on. But we certainly don't want to be burning our employees out to the point that they're less effective. There are going to be those days where we just won't have double-edged sword. That's why this was kind of a, hey, obviously got dropped at the last minute. We need to come up with a solution. Probably get us there for 24, but
Is it possible to contract outside labor that is authorized to carry a firearm?
Well, I can just tell you that, obviously that if that were the prudent choice, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion at all, because it probably would have been status quo and the courts would be taking care of factors has to deal with right now. It's just
Didn't we used to have security in the guard shack that was outside labor that carried firearms?
they were unarmed.
They were unarmed. And they don't have that option.
Well, I'm not going to say that there's not that option. There is armed security out there, but it's not just about a gun on the hip. It's about authority to take action, and who gives that authority, and then what that does with that authority. Significant risk management issue there when you don't have your employees that you've backgrounded, that you've trained. Bag for what they do, and
Would there be any union implications if we did pursue an outside hiring program?
that certainly is a possibility. But there, like the idea that we're using our constitutional law.
Mr. Connor, how many deputies do we have on call or on duty at any given duty cycle?
Staffed and everyone's full duty.
So basically, the courthouse could have just as many deputies in the courtroom as Franklin County has on their roads throughout the entire county.
How many shifts are you running at this time? 3?
We run 4 shifts. So they
4
work
shifts?
at 12-hour days.
So with that type of shift they must all be getting overtime every week.
No, it's we have in our collective bargaining agreements, fire department's working 24 hours.
I mean, if we're mandated to do it, I don't see what other choice there is.
You're going to pay one way or the other because they're going to have to fill those with overtime or,
But for clarification, it is the state that is saying that bailiffs could no longer carry firearms.
you know, and Marcus, could you clarify that for me? Because I was just thinking that, because I know the Benton County Sheriff, he exercised, was that an option or was that a mandate? I know it came out of the legislature this past session, but my understanding was that Sheriff Krosky exercised that ability, but I don't know if it was an option or a mandate that he had to do. So,
Well, unfortunately, in our business, there's a lot of rule changes and knee-jerk reactions right now, and we can only attempt to interpret most of those. So I'll do my best to interpret it, but I want to make sure that you understand, you've heard several different opinions, and,
Right.
and mine is just another one of those. So the judges have been operating armed bailiffs in Franklin County for several years under a judicial order. There's been no authority granted by the sheriff. He revoked that 3 years ago because of the training and qualification proficiency issues. The sheriff of Benton County, it's my understanding in talking to their office, is that they now also share some of the same concerns that our sheriff did 3 years ago, and they made a risk management decision that it was not in the best interest of their own risk and liability to continue those commissions. So he made the decision to revoke that. The judges then decided that they were going to rescind their judicial order that allowed that in Franklin County instead of going further and making it Franklin and Benton County. So there are a lot of law changes, hundreds of pages of law changes. And yes, we have a lot more additional mandates for training. I have to take diversity and inclusion training to maintain my certification as mandated by the state of Washington. That's just the reality. The state gets to change these rules and we have to comply with them to keep our state peace officer certification. They have changed the corrections deputy positions to where they are now in the same category as law enforcement deputies as far as being certified through the state and having to maintain what the state wants us to maintain in the way of training and proficiencies. So there's a lot of those factors. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that there is a bright line mandate on the issue. But I will tell you, it's certainly the opinion of the judges that there is, and so I'll leave it at that.
Could our sheriff grant a commission? Does he have that authority?
Yeah, the sheriff retains
for
the
a bailiff,
authority to do that as he deems in the best interest of the citizens of Franklin County.
I mean, his authority trumps the judges, from what I understand, right? So he
Yeah.
could theoretically say, I could institute my own bailiffs with a commission, right?
So the sheriff's authority primarily is granted by the state constitution, and so are the judges. And there's a lot of wording that commingles that, in certain circumstances, the sheriff is subordinate to the judges, and the sheriff has to execute the orders of the judges. So, it's a much more complicated answer than to just say the sheriff can do this,
Right.
because it really has to be in conjunction with what the judges want, or the judges are going to tell us what we're going to do, and the sheriff's going to be bound to that.
Right. So it's a push-pull game. It's, he has the authority, but they could mandate.
But he also takes on all responsibility
yeah.
once he puts somebody in that position.
Right. Yeah. So you take on the liability of, you get a guy from, XYZ security company, and that's on us. Yeah.
And I mean, I believe that the Constitution stops short of telling the sheriff who he has to. That discretion stays with him. But as far as requiring the sheriff to perform a function, yes, in certain circumstances, the judges can do that.
Thanks.
Marcus, you might as well stay there because we're moving down to corrections next. And you said yesterday you had an adjustment there?
Yeah, so I talked to Tim about it kind of after the meeting, and, I don't know if he had a chance to look at that commissary fund and see if it was feasible to kind of shift some of that burden into that fund or not. I talked to Commander Harmon this morning about it as well. There might be some wiggle room there. Obviously there's not a ton, and that commissary fund is restricted in some respects on what can be paid out of that, because the fund is generated through sales to the inmates. So we do need to make sure that it's, going towards, they call it inmate benefit. So in some way, that's how those funds should be paid. Now, obviously, the operation of running the commissary system is an inmate benefit, and therefore we can use those funds for that. But, like I said, it's not going to move the needle a ton, but it's certainly something that we could look at, kind of massaging that ratio if we need to.
Okay. That's a yes for me.
Yes, from Commissioner Didier. Thank you. And then the civil service, more hours needed in that department.
Right. And I talked a little bit about this with Jennifer, who manages that area. And this is I think we started the line items in the middle of last year. So this is, I think, far beyond what we think is necessary, because this person works at the most probably 40 hours a month. So we can, we're attempting to tighten our belt even further, Chair. So we've decided we can eliminate 10,000 from this realistically, because we wanted to give ourselves a little bit of a cushion just in case it was necessary. So.
But the way I understood it, that 14,000 is only for half a year.
Right. So when you do the math, this person works, they're supposed to work about 8 hours a week and 40 hours a month max. It's not a benefited position, and it works primarily with, really only with civil service. So we did some math, and we thought those numbers would work out.
So it'd be down to 18,000 then? You take 28, double that, take 28 minus 10, it's 18.
Right. So
That's where we're gonna be at?
I know we were talking about the project analysts in some of our areas, and I did put together a PowerPoint because I wanted to visualize kind of how we further tightened, after the discussion about the government affairs and about the administrative manager, and also I wanted to introduce Carrie Locke. She's been sort of a mythical figure in these budget talks. She's over in the corner. Would you raise your hand? And so Carrie's been working really hard with us. So I brought her in just in case there's any questions for any department heads or elected officials, but she can answer some questions in terms of parity and things like that. So anyhow, she's here and can make recommendations however you guys want to. I wanted to give the commission access to her just in case you had any questions. Tim, I may need to borrow if I just plug in here. I think, do I have my own?
There is another one there, I think.
Hopefully, I don't know where Austin is, but.
Before we switch to yours real quick, is there 2 yeses on the civil services one?
Yes.
Yes.
See if I can get this, Tim. Let's see. That was just my notes there. So. So again, I just wanted to visualize, give you guys a visual, because I went back yesterday evening and wanted to do my part and continue to tighten our belt in the commissioner's office. So just a few key points that I wanted to point out to the group. Originally in this budget, we came in $1,500 under budget compared to, in the 2024 budget to the 2023 budget. So the adjustments we went back yesterday evening and made, so we're looking at an additional basically 25,000 up to 27,000. That will be under budget compared to 2023. A reminder, we eliminated the project manager position, reorganized the office, where I think it makes it more efficient and effective with the addition of the government affairs director. Size of the office will ultimately remain the same. We'll spend a significant amount less. So I wanted to give you a feel for the org chart that I have visioned. You see the county administrator up there. This administrative services manager will take on RV Park Civil Service Chief Examiner, Clerk of the Board, Administrative Assistant, Office Assistant, and Office of Public Defense. So as I just did there, we eliminated that 10,000 from civil service, which frees up some space for us. Government Affairs Director went back. We originally had it in a 17-1 8-hour, 65,000. Adjusted that to a 16-1 7.5, brings it in at 55.55. I certainly did want it at 65 just from a recruitment standpoint, but I think with this position, there's been a lot of talk about it. We give it a year. If there's no return on investment, I'll eat my words and we'll let this person go. But I am adamant about the effect I think it could have. Net savings at this point, 19,653. So this administrative manager, and I wanted to give you some perspective on the person that would potentially take this, where they're at right now. They're at a 16.3. Currently handle BOE training, clerk of board, plus their current duties. There was some mention that this individual was not educated. That was false. 15 years of government experience, Associates of Arts, 15 credits shy of a business degree, which she is currently working on. 2023, as you can see, she has really taken on a huge burden. It's caused about 10,000 of overtime. So her 2023 wages, a little bit over 71,000. I'm projecting, we haven't closed business in 2023. You see the number there. The original proposal that we had was moving her to a 19.1 at 78, but we've got to tighten our belts, and so now 17.3 at 71,905. So you wind up saving on wages without the OT pressure, and total net savings 27,000. So the key themes, about 27,000 in savings that we come under compared to 2023. So I feel really good about that. There's more possible savings with Commissioner Mullen's idea. If Commissioner Didier and Commissioner Mullen don't travel a ton, I think there's some savings.
If I might add, if I travel, I'm going to use my own money. You can take my travel money out.
Okay, so that's so that's an additional savings. When Teresa Alvarez returns from maternity leave, there won't be that pressure on overtime either. So we'll certainly tighten our belts, and we'll keep an eye on it. And I think we've been one of the most fiscally conservative departments in the county, and really trying to be mindful not to spend taxpayer dollars frivolously. So I feel good, commissioners, about the budget that I'm proposing. So.
So Tim, if you remove that commissioner travel funds on my behalf, is that 5,000?
Yeah, I think
Would get us
each
up to
commissioner
32.
has.
There is 5,000 each.
So that would be another 10 there if Commissioner Mullen is in agreement too, which he's already stated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it.
Right.
So,
Okay, so can we give
Yeah,
back,
yeah. I'm gonna release this.
Tim have the screen back now?
Yeah, it's all yours.
So with respect to the, with respect to the travel amounts, I think it's great if commissioners want to fund their own travel. I don't think Commissioners Didier or Mullen have traveled much, if any, in the time that they've been on the board. And for Franklin County to continue to be fully represented and have our interests heard beyond these walls, there's going to be some travel, and increasingly counties who are tight on funds have pushed on WASAC and other entities, and we've been able to get a good portion of travel funded by them. And for the benefit of those going forward, since I won't be here, we've managed to conserve a fair amount of travel funding. But for the county to be represented, there's still going to have to be a fair amount of travel, and I would encourage at least keeping in mind that having some surplus funds available. I'm not sure that all commissioners are fully up to date on what those travel costs amount to. But again, kudos to them if they're willing to pay all that out of their pockets. As for Mr. Gonzalez's presentation, I noticed that a lot of the discussion was about the individual, and that's fair. I mean, it's people who do the work here. But as Commissioner Mullen and I both discussed yesterday in the meeting, that these decisions and the funding for them and the grades that these positions should be at are not driven by the individuals. They're driven by the duties and responsibilities of the position. That's what we're really paying for. So the scope and the breadth and the depth of responsibility is what drives these ratings, not someone who maybe has a little more education or a little less. It's the job. The project manager position, after doing a little more research and looking at some things in Public Works. It may have been removed from the Commissioner's office, but it absolutely was added in Public Works. Now, they maintain certain project manager positions for various functions within Public Works, and they can add project manager positions, so there's no foul there. But to suggest that this position was taken away and the tax burden, the cost on the citizens somehow went away because we eliminated this position, and to claim credit for that savings, I think is not appropriate if, in fact, the position goes to Public Works and the taxpayers simply pay for a comparable position. Indeed, the very same person that was in this position in the Commissioner's office is going to be in this position at Public Works. So we're still paying for it. It's not really a savings to the county. And so I don't like the notion that we're claiming that as a credit toward what we're looking to do here in the Commissioner's office. It just isn't. The taxpayers are still paying for it. The cost didn't go away. We just moved the position to another budget over in Public Works. As for the grade of the individual, I can see that there might be some fair justification for a bit of a grade increase there. I don't support a 19. The nature of the work in the Commissioner's office is no more or no less important than any other department, but it's a fairly high level of responsibility to try and put together completed staff work to satisfy these three personalities up here, and I'm not sure there's many people working in the courthouse that would care to take that on. So I could see a little bit of support for an 18. I absolutely strongly opposed to this notion of a PR government position based on a lot of years' experience working in those circles. If we really think that we want to go that route and we want to spend that money, I highly recommend that we spend it on professional consultants, lobbyists who already have long-established relationships with the state legislature. That's the only place where I've really seen there and Wasack where I've seen any significant movement of the needle. So there's my thoughts on it. Thanks.
And Commissioner, we did talk with Carrie Locke, and she analyzed the administrative manager position, and we may have had it overgraded, based on her expertise. A max of an 18 was her suggestion based on the paperwork. So I do acknowledge that, and we may
talk either, did we?
yeah, and we made that adjustment.
Gary and I didn't.
No, but you're spot on. I feel good that we did our due diligence to make sure that we're in proper alignment, because I certainly, I don't want to over reward somebody if they're not, in that scope. But I know these jobs aren't about one individual, but certainly I'll advocate for this individual. She's, we know that she's done a tremendous job. We've had an interesting year where we've had, clerks walk out on us and BOE hearings in the 300 or the high 200s, nearly 300 new employees that had to be trained. So clearly, this individual has a true grasp on, and it is difficult. Working in the Commissioner's office is not easy. You have strong personalities, and then we work with all the elected officials. So, those relationships are vital to know the different personalities, not only on the commission, but also across the courthouse. So, I think I've sold all my areas as much as I can. Commissioner Peck and I, we've had some robust debates, and I think there's good points and counterpoints, and I don't want to belabor it, commissioners, anymore. And I think we've both made our points, and I'll respect his points, and call it good, and respect whatever decision you gentlemen make. It was a 17.3 coming at, hold on, let me make sure, Kelly, just so I'm not misstating. So it'd come in 16, Okay, yes. 17.3 at 8 hours, that's 71,905.
I just wanted to make a point, several years ago, when we did the study, and I know for a fact it talked to us this morning, and our positions were moved at that time. And even though we had been here for over 10 years, we had to start at step 1. So now that Russ has been here 10 years, he hasn't even made it to step 7 yet. Because when they did the study, they said if you're moving into established grade, you have to start at step 1. And so all of us that were moved up had to start at step 1, unless our salaries were ahead of that. And Russ, at the time, I think he was, oh, he's at a 5, okay. Oh, he's almost at, they got an anniversary.
That is what they held our office, my office too as well, when we were promoting somebody up into a manager. We had to start her at a 1 last year.
And it didn't matter how many years we had to.
Just to make sure just to make sure my sheet is correct, the 17.3 that you were referring to, is that the government affairs?
No, that's,
Director? The administrative services
yes.
manager?
Yep, you got it. And I think my thinking was,
And the government affairs director was,
it was a 16.1 at 7.5. And
37.5 hours?
yes, sir.
And so are those still
Jennifer's, I had hers allotted in at a 8-hour, and my reasoning, or at least my logic anyway, was we're projecting she'll make right around 73, and the 17.3 is 71 basically, so she'll actually wind up making less than last year, but it, there's more parity there, but I totally understand where everyone's coming from in terms of the, starting at a step 1.
Yeah.
When we did that, moving one of our supervisors to a manager position, we had to go into level 1. However, HR at that time recommended, and we went with it, with a 6-month probationary, and then they could move up to a step 2 after 6 months, providing they probationary period. So that was just something that we had done. That was like before last year. So I'm just throwing that out as handled in this county.
I'm curious why we've got all these combined into one block. Shouldn't they be, and I'm requesting that they be separated out so that we can look at each of these requested changes independently? I don't believe an all or none list is appropriate in this process.
If the consort study is going to be done the 1st of February, I think we should just wait for that. It seems the most fair and equitable. I mean, it's only basically 6 weeks away.
You mean for the increase or the reclassification and all that for this?
Yes.
Is your intent to still move the clerk of the board and the office assistant to 40 hours a week?
Honestly, Tim, I don't, I was trying to get some consistency and the classic work 8 hours a day, because the issue that we were having with the clerk is the meetings start at 9, so theoretically, not theoretically, the shift starts at 8:30. So there was a lot of moving parts. So I'm an 8 to 5 person, it gives more clarity. So that was the thought, but we are facing, some financial hardships. So we could keep it the same, and because there is sort of a natural raise when you go to 8 hours. So.
So I wasn't here, I've only been here 3 years, but what was the reasoning that they went to 37 and a half hours to begin with?
Gosh, there's been many theories, Commissioner, and I'm sure there's several in the room.
I was here when it happened.
Was it
Kelly, could
because
you
of
give
the
us
budget?
because
It was budget restraints. They
Yeah.
had no money to give us for several years. And so they finally just said, in lieu of a COLA, we're gonna lower your hours to 37 instead of increasing the pay. Other counties do it. My sister lives in Spokane, works in Spokane. They're steps behind us because they also still have the payroll issue that we've had, where, you're paying people and have our payroll now is amazing compared to. So we have made some growth, but that's where that happened, and it was probably 30.
Wow. 14 years ago?
No, it was 30.
It was about 10 years ago. It came along with the furloughs also.
I was working at the treasurer's office when it.
Irregardless, it was to save money.
Yeah.
well, now we know the reasoning. Thank you, appreciate it. So,
Well, I mean, is there work that it's not getting done in that 37 and a half hours? I don't see a whole lot of traffic going through the commissioner's office, but
yeah, our work is very computer. It's not physical. It's all via computer, so it's super busy work. As you know, with the clerk getting the ASRs, some of it's herding cats, and we've got the new computer program, so that should help out quite a bit. So it's.
well, I guess my point is that, if they're able to get the work done in that amount of time, it's not really a customer service cut because we don't obviously have a.
No,
I think
and I
cutting
think
an hour a day is not going to.
the way I see it, Commissioner, is we make adjustments and we work as quickly and efficiently as we can. And if that's the parameters that they give us to work in, we do the best. Our employees do the best they can within that scope. So
Take a 30-minute lunch. It's
Yeah.
only a 30-minute service cut.
yeah, so
And, no one has a crystal ball, but if those cuts were made for budgetary reasons, and if the future looks as bleak as what
yeah, I'm
everyone's
not
saying-
comfortable. I know where I'm not comfortable moving it to 40 hours when it's at
Okay.
37.5. At this point, it makes no sense to me to really do that.
All right, thank you.
So I concur.
I think Commissioner Mullen has already said he prefers to wait until the consular study on the, looks like the first 3 or 4 there. And I said the very same thing yesterday, so I think that's 2 people now that have said that we think that should wait for the study.
So no on all these first 3?
All 4 of them.
Okay, I'll.
The only thing I'll say with the government affairs director, the session starts January 8th, so we have to get that person in place as quickly as we possibly can.
Well, that assumes hiring a person. I still contend that it's a much better investment if we have money to spend, which candidly we don't. But if we do, it's a much better investment to hire professional lobbyists who have existing relationships in Olympia, and we don't have to partner with Pasco. We can darn sure partner with some of our eastern Washington counties who have very similar interests. I think that's a much better expenditure if we're going to spend money on that function.
Well, I see both sides of that, and you were wanting to bring that person in at a
16-1,
16-1.
so 55.
I mean, if they can pay for themselves, I think the job is worthy.
And that's the caveat I'm willing to throw out to this entire group is if there is no return on investment, I will certainly come back to this board next year and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm not afraid to take that chance. I do think it's a good investment. If we have to wait on the administrative manager and wait for the consort study, you know, there's a reason we have bonuses that we have in place to keep employees in place. So that is one
Well, if
thing
we
to think
wait for the
about.
consort study on that position, it does put that person at a disadvantage. But are you going to be able to find a person that is going to make the right fit for that? Because that's going to take a very specialized person that can go to Olympia and start advocating for us.
Yeah, I think I can find it. I think I can find that person. I'm pretty confident.
Well, I'll tell you, having spent many, many hours in the halls of the state legislature, I will tell you that it's about access, it's about relationships, it's about the balance of power in the legislature, it's about a lot of things. But the people who get the consistent best access are the professional lobbyists who have many, many years of relationship building in our state legislature. I candidly can't think of a situation where a county has hired a government affairs person who has been able to engage the legislature in a way that brought money on any consistent basis, if at all, to their county. I'm thinking about other counties whose commissioners include former state reps and state senators. They partner with other counties and they buy time from professional lobbyists. But listen, I'm not going to have to be here to watch the thing implode. I'll watch it from back there. So
Well, that's
there's
good.
my 2
Well,
cents.
you're predicting a failure, and I just attended the Eastern Washington Council of Governments where 3 counties reported grant money they received from their people that they sent to Olympia. So it's out there. And to predict doom and a failure on somebody that's not even in place yet is an injustice to the opportunity. And Commissioner Peck, your experience is well noted. Your success over in Olympia is not.
Really,
I don't think so.
several $1 million for the criminal justice or for the juvenile justice. I suppose that
Commissioner
doesn't count.
Peck, you can go through your accolades all you want.
I'm
but
just-
right now, I got
I-
two.
If you're going to get petty about it, let's just move on.
That's right.
And Chair, not to belabor the issue, but I wanted to, Commissioner Peck brings up a good point because there's going to be grant identification involved. So, and I'll use myself as an example. So, I had a multifaceted role at the city of Pasco. Grant identification was one of those, and in fact, I got a brownfield grant from BFCOG in 2022 to identify, ground that may be contaminated. So, had that opportunity to work with them, help bring infrastructure dollars for Broadmoor. I actually got a grant, helped get a grant in .09 funds to get money for Dairy Gold, help lobby $7 million for the MLK Center. So this role will work with what we call NOFOs, and those are Notice of Funding Opportunities. which we aren't doing now. So this, I mean, it's a huge thing. So essentially, I helped write a grant that I got from CURB last year. It was a $100,000 grant when I was at the city of Pasco for planning. So it's, it's these type of things that the person you identify. There's times you're working with an outside grant writer. There's times you're doing it yourself. This individual wore many hats. Again, they'll work with BFCOG like I did, TriDeck, the Ledge Council, Shoreline Reconveyance. They'll probably wind up working with Ben Franklin, Board of Health, as a conduit. So it'll be a multifaceted role that could also take some pressure off me because, I'm still delving into these areas. But, hey, counterpoint, but again, there was a return on investment that I brought to the city of Pasco. Will this individual be able to do the same things that I did? I don't know. I'll certainly be there to support that individual with my expertise and my connections. And, finding the right individual is always, it's not a science, it's an art. But anyway, I'll leave it at that because there's been much debate about it. But again, I stand and I think it'll be an effective person for Franklin County.
I'll just make a note here for people who were listening carefully to my words. I didn't speak to the grant piece. I spoke to the lobbying piece. Pursuing grants is a fine thing, and we should be doing more of it. And I've sent numerous NOFO notices to the county administrator over the last several months, recommending that follow up on those. So, and by the way, the brownfield grants that Mr. Gonzalez so aptly secured for Pasco were actually first secured by Council of Governments as chair of that group, and we provided those for a number of people. So that was pretty easy one. The Darigold project was actually enabled by TIF's tax increment financing, which was recently allowed by the state. So these are all team efforts, and I don't disagree with the notion that having somebody looking out for grant opportunities, but I don't believe it's a full-time job, especially not in this market.
Our office, we have several, and a lot of times we can't, you have to have a certain amount of percentage. There's a certain percentage that you have to provide, and you need more manpower. That or you don't get the money. And so it's so much work. But it ends up being a lot of manpower. So do you is that not how those grants work?
That's a tough question to answer because each grant is so much different, whether it's an infrastructure grant, whether it's a planning grant. With planning grants, there's typically reporting stipulations that usually aren't, depending on the grant, too extensive and manageable by an individual. Grants are typically pointed towards an individual department or elected official area. So you would hope that that grant aligns with the manpower available. You look to Public Works; they're not going to do a project that they can't necessarily take on. So, and I've seen that happen where someone gets a grant, they can't manage it, and then it gets really messed up. In terms of the reporting elements. So I think it's about alignment and making sure you have the manpower. Some grants require matching funds. So it's a tough question to answer because each grant it's just so wildly different depending on what you're looking for, what your capabilities are, what your staffing levels are. But if you're not in the game, then you're getting nothing. So. Yeah, Kelly, and I'm not selling it as a grant writer. I'm selling it as, based on my experience in a similar role at the City of Pasco. It was primarily grant identification, working with experts that, the way grants are paid for, you get an expert to write it. Typically, they get a small cut of the total pie. I wrote a couple of grants, but they are difficult for an individual, and because you've done them. So I certainly don't want to oversell to the public. This is a grant writer, but you'd be amazed how many grant opportunities come our way from. Like, I just got an email from Raquel Crowley recently. Hey, here's 100 grants that may fit Franklin County. And you go, okay, who's gonna even read? And here's one. Hey, here, prosecutor's office. Here's one that might fit you. OPD, this might fit you. Sheriff's office, this might fit you. So right now we don't even have anybody doing that or the capacity. So again, this puts us in the game, and identification, and then leveraging our relationships in the community or Olympia or whatever the case may be. Tridex sends them our way because they have a contract with the Department of Commerce. BF Cog, who's been really, I had a great relationship with the group over there. So there's multiple channels, but right now we're not even in the game. And I don't want to discount what
Can we
Wasik
just
does.
put a question mark on this? Because I am inclined to give it a go with a 6-month reevaluation on what has been accomplished in the first session while he was over there. If we can even get somebody hired for $55,000
I think that's
with a
fair,
6
Chair.
months analysis of the
Absolutely.
situation, and then a 1-year determination whether we keep them on or not.
I think that's fair, Chair.
Can
And
we just put a question mark with that and move on for now?
Yeah.
I would agree to that too, because I would like to see what the results are.
And keep in mind, the first 6 months are going to be relationship building, and of course, I'll leverage my contacts and make sure this person's successful. But there'll be fruits of the labor. I mean, I'm certain of it. And they'll also work with other elected officials too. So I mean, everyone in the courthouse will have access to this individual for legislative priorities, and they're working on the behalf of the county. Whether that's the sheriff's office, the commissioner's office, the auditor's office. So that's really where I see this person, helping the county.
And I see Liz in the back. Do you guys apply for a lot of grants for the hardware and stuff that you got to, is there grants out there for you too? Are you guys pursuing them? Do you think you're missing some of them? So this individual could help you, maybe, yes.
I would just like to add too, while we have a lot of the electeds here, Spokane County Sheriff's Department is putting on a grant writing seminar in early January, and they're looking for participants. So if there's people in your office that you think would benefit from that, then I think we should investigate it.
And I've got that email. I'll forward it to everybody.
Okay, Tim, let's move on for the time being here.
So the next section I have is some requests I got from the facilities department and these are related to the new building that we just acquired, and some of the estimated costs to deal with this in the next year. So that all of this purchase happened after the budget was submitted, and so I was given these numbers. So for essentially supplies within the building, there was an estimate of $3,000. Utilities, which was, I think, based on the 502 Boeing building that we have, at $7,000, and then just repairs and maintenance on that building, $8,000, for a grand total on those requests of $18,000.
So is there any ARPA funds left to, and would that satisfy that?
Right now, we've got 440,000 essentially left. That's
Can it be
obviously not
used
an
for this?
exact number.
I guess the one thing I'd say on this is these are just normal, everyday
Right.
stuff. It's the stuff that it would do in the courthouse and in every other building, just normal, everyday stuff, as well as utilities. Thanks, Jennifer.
And Jen, when we're out there at that Public Works, you're maintaining that property even though it's a rental, correct?
Yes, yeah, we're maintaining the exteriors. Sometimes they'll ask us to do things in the inside.
So if we're able to vacate that building, then is that just about the same amount as this amount?
The Public Works building is paying their own utilities. I don't know what they pay for their own utilities. We based it on the 502, basically, their utilities and what supplies and maintenance for janitorial.
Okay. Do you need a yes on that, or?
Yes, I would need a yes.
Yes.
That was 1,200 a year, you said? So a grand total of almost 20,000 for these more recent requests.
And Chair, it is my understanding that we can use ARPA funding to make any upgrades or changes or,
Okay.
cut a hole in a wall or add a wall with those funds.
And these costs are going to probably be more efficiently done right now than waiting till later when there's people in the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been working with Tim Waters, and he's already working on a schematic to kind of get the office operating, or at least the structure of it operating the way he wants it. Curtis McGurry has already been in the smaller side, and he's got a game plan that he's got going, and he's working closely with Jennifer. So everybody's on point, like in terms of, so they've been great. Liz is already working on the data connection. So we've got Derek, who's working on any permitting issues. So everybody's working in conjunction, so I commend them. And they probably know more than I do at this point. We talk about it in our department head meeting on Mondays, but they're more in the weeds than I am, in terms of what's going on.
The WSU and the elections are sharing the building downtown, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. They're sharing the old building. So the intent is to move WSU Extension. Tim Waters, who heads that group in there, with the Weed and Pest Board, and then, gosh doggone, I'm forgetting somebody else.
What are we doing with elections?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I thought there was somebody else in there. Okay.
And so elections is going to stay down there?
At this point, they are, and
We own that building.
yeah, but we do own that.
I thought I heard somebody mention possibly selling it, so that's why I asked.
Our realtor who helped us purchase the Davidson building is looking into that, just so we have the knowledge base, and because there was apparently a client that was looking for a similar space, so it kind of piqued his interest because he knew that we owned that building. So he inquired, And it could be worth quite a bit. It's a big building, 16,000 square feet, and so there is that option.
But we do have a lot of cost in
Yeah,
the
but-
election facility, and we're going to have to
Yeah,
repeat
that
that.
that would be quite a cost. I'm imagining, Matt, to relocate and move, because there's functions of the elections office that with specialized machinery and all sorts of things. To move that would be quite a cost.
There'd be a lot of planning involved. I'm sure the county has invested a tremendous amount of money into that as far as the security and all the observation areas and different vaults and every door, track door, everybody in and out. It's doable.
Cameras.
It's all just a matter of, if you get that close, ideally a lease back would be good to give us
Right.
time to, but I mean, until we get to that point, we're wasting our time.
Right.
We would certainly participate in looking at what the substitute location would be.
We own the building next door also. And I've said for a few years now, we ought to sell both of them and buy the Davidson and put the balance into our reserves. So we're on a path to do that.
You talking about the health, it's all one, is it all one building, or is it, I thought it was one building just separate? Is it all one? The health department's on the other side, but it's all.
Right, it is all one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all-
Is it all one structure?
Yep.
I remember when you put the new
Yeah, it
roof
is.
on. I mean, we didn't put a new roof, but we took the power off the top. And
Right.
Just the years I've been here, this board has been committed to, apparently not in very good shape, so.
What kind of lease money do we get out of the health department on that?
30,000 a year.
That, I don't have any idea, it doesn't really plan.
Okay. All right, that's a yes for me. Is there another yes?
By the building, I think you have to do those things. I'm not convinced you can do the routine stuff, ARPA, but maybe you can.
For the new facilities, yes.
Okay, that's a yes.
The next one on the list I have is another facilities one. Jennifer Wagner was concerned that we didn't have funding for the clean building performance standards. So this is something that if we're not in compliance starting in 2026 or 2027, we would incur $5,000 plus 85 cents a square foot fee every year that we're not in compliance. So the fee, what we end up paying every year could be pretty significant if we aren't in compliance by the timeline. And on top of that, we need a year's worth of recording of utilities to see whether we're in compliance or not. And so really probably the timeline's more like 2025, 2026 to be done so that we don't avoid. So the cost of that, it's going to be some professional services. She had estimated $100,000 originally, but that's it's really kind of an unknown. She was saying it could be less, maybe 70,000, but uncertain exactly right now. I think the 100,000 was just to make sure that we're covered, that we budgeted enough. So she was resubmitting this request because of the significance of it, the concern in not doing it right now.
So Jennifer, is that cost just the recording of the utility fees?
So it's actually getting a professional in here. I've stated this before. I cannot do it. We can record it for a year, but when it's submitted to the state, it has to be a qualified personnel. And they have a list of the qualified, it's
Of course they do.
engineer, or it's somebody with a certain certification. So I can't do it myself. It's got to be somebody else. So while we can do the recording and everything else, and put it in the Energy Star portfolio, I can't submit it. I can't do anything. And then also we want to make sure that we're under the point, it's a point system, so we're under that point system. If we're not, then we have to get somebody here who can either say, you know what, we're going to look for a grant for you to have the electric plug-ins in your parking lot, or we're going to see what else. the propane or the gas boilers that they put in 10 years ago are now going to be a problem with the emissions that they're doing. And so we just have, it's a number of things that I would like to say I can take care of myself, but we need somebody in here who knows what they're doing. So we're going to comply with the state.
Natural gas boilers? Yeah, our governor, he's put a war on that.
The entire jail and the Justice Center have probably 6 gas boilers right now that they're complaining about the emissions from those, so.
Well, have you plugged in any numbers yet? Have you done any of
We
this?
have started somewhat. It was kind of fell by the wayside, and now it's gearing back up. It's just having that person who, every single time we get the utilities, because we probably have 15 to 20 utility bills that we're paying monthly. And so we have to put all of those utility bills in, so.
Okay.
The Clean Building Performance Standard, when did that come into effect?
It's within the last couple months. It's just been really pushed the last couple months. I want to say the last 8 months, so. And I know that Keith was part of a committee. He and I both were on a committee getting regular emails, probably like once every 3 months, updating people. And the state has been off and on about changing regulations, changing rulemaking. And so they say, okay, you need all of these meters to comply. And then, nope, no, you don't need the meters now. So it's just kind of been a wait and see of what we really need to get to qualify. But we do need to put the information into the system for at least a year, and then we need to see where we're at. So that's getting that person in here and seeing where we're at and complying, not waiting to the last minute, because we're gonna be in real big trouble if we wait more than a year for this. And I would hate to see what happens, because if you're worried about $100,000 right now, and you start getting stuck with a bill because we didn't comply, and I'm coming to you now and telling you we have to comply.
Yeah, well, that's,
No choice, you have to comply. And that's just as, that's saying, hey, it's $100,000. It may be less than that. Right now, I've got a request for qualifications on our website, and I've put it into the Franklin County Graphic, trying to get, okay, we want people in here who are qualified to actually submit it to the state without pushing projects on us, because I think we're under where we need to be. I just don't think the projects are where, we just don't have the money. We don't have the money to get the grants to put forward. If we get grants right now, we're gonna have to put a lot of money forward before we're actually paid off for those grants.
Have you looked to see who McKinstry used out at the Hapo Center?
Well, it would be McKinstry would be
It's their
doing-
engineers?
Yeah, they've been here they were here a couple years ago, and they did a small energy audit for us. And it would be going through DES to get McKinstry, Apollo, any of the larger names. I would like to get somebody who's just an engineer in here and just go under the wire and not spend a lot of money on maybe things we
Yep.
don't need to. But I know
Exactly.
that we get a bigger person in here, we're gonna start getting electric, trying to get solar power in a parking lot somewhere. I think we're okay with what we have, and we just need to submit what we have, so.
Okay. And you got a $70,000 figure there with question marks.
It could be less than $100,000, maybe around 70, I don't really know. I don't wanna say, hey, it's gonna be $20,000 and we end up more than that
Yep.
because we have to supply something.
Well, that sounds like it's gonna have to be done too. It's a yes for me.
and again, what is the penalty?
It is $5,000 plus 85 cents a square foot, and we are at 199 square feet. 199,000, excuse me.
Yeah, I was
Little extra.
gonna say, well, we'll just take the fine then.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that.
199,000 is a different number.
Well, that's why I asked. Sometimes
Per year.
The fine is less than,
Yeah.
no, it
So-
isn't.
just want to make sure.
No,
Thank you.
no, I
Next one on the list is the fire life safety panel replacement. This was in the preliminary budget request. This was something that would benefit the jail and justice center. The cost is $240,000. One of my thoughts on this, and something that I've talked to Mike a little bit about, is having this funded. It's possible that we could fund this through our REIT money.
I might need to request a 5-minute recess. I don't know how long we're gonna go, but
Well, I think we're almost to the end of the list, right?
We're getting close.
Commissioner Mullen has requested a 5-minute recess. But on that panel, before we leave, the ARPA funds could be used for that too, correct? If we had to.
Potentially, you only have so many ARPA funds to go around.
I know, and the OPD's using them up faster than we can.
This is true. Well, with the PA's office, I think we're, close to at least 750,000.
This one right here, this is one that, yes, I think we could use the ARPA, but at the same time, this is some money, the REIT money, we haven't been using a lot. So we have, I want to say it's like 2.4 million right now in there. It's something that we haven't used significantly. And there are some, some requirements for it. The revenues are restricted, may only be used for certain capital purposes, and housing relocation assistance, depending on the county's population and whether it fully plans under the GMA Growth Management Act.
So when would you know, Tim, if we could use those funds?
I think the biggest, so we ran it by Jeff Briggs as well from the, I think our question was more on the county road stuff that we were talking about before, using it for some county road projects, which was a yes. I think ultimately we can. I think one of the limiting factors is I think you're supposed to have it in your capital plan, and so the mechanics of, and there may be some reporting requirements for it. I'm certainly not an expert on this REIT money or anything. And I'd hate to put Jeff Briggs on the spot, but he may be able to enlighten us more than I could certainly on this. But certainly, if this is a source of revenue that we can use for that, and it sounds like it's a desperately needed item, then this could be a good use of the funds and save current expense money. And but I think we may have to adopt a capital plan or something to be able to do this.
Is this also a fund that we could use for what Jennifer has asked for the?
I would tend to say no. It's mostly capital related. There's some other maintenance type stuff, but that's more on the line of professional services. So I would tend to say that no, it probably doesn't qualify under that. But
There might be a grant available for that too, for auditing your energy usage. Since the state government's the one that's laying down the law for us.
so this says it includes projects such as streets, parks, sewers, water mains, swimming pools, gymnasiums, acquisition of real and personal property associated with such improvements. And then capital projects.
Acquisition of real and personal property?
The uses are pretty broad, and we sort of ran into this fund because we were looking for a way to supplement the road
How much
shift.
have we got in this fund?
2.8 million, right? Something like that, Tim?
Can I ask you, supplying the jail, would it not be a law enforcement facility?
Yeah.
For the Justice Center and the
Right,
jail.
I saw that.
And that's one of the stipulations was for a law enforcement facility.
I think it can even be used for other facilities as well, even outside of law enforcement as well. So I think it qualifies under that and just the general facilities stuff. There's 2.4 in there, 2.4 million right now. For next budget year, actually next budget year, I have. Next budget year, I have, I guess 2.4 carrying over into next year.
All right. So let's take a 5-minute recess, and we'll reconvene in 3:11. Yes, and we're back in session. So we were talking about the panel and that,
So we had sent an email to Jeff Briggs before on the REIT money, and the question was originally related to public works type stuff, but ultimately, I think this still falls under the capital requirements, capital items of the REIT, and his comment was that it can be used to directly fund in whole or in part capital projects identified in the capital facilities element of our comp plan. The reporting requirements are noted by MRSC and must be part of the budget process. And then he's referring to some maintenance type stuff, but there's I think there's a capital element and a maintenance element. I think this would fall into the capital. There's maintenance limitations to where you can only use, I think, 25% of the funds for maintenance of capital equipment.
okay. So if this falls underneath it, that'll take care of it.
REIT 1 only, we never
Correct.
proposed REIT 2.
We do have both REIT 1 and REIT 2.
I misspoke. What I meant to say was, we went to a graduated REIT system in 2020, the state did. Local REIT and the state. When we did that, I guess my question is, did that displace REIT 2?
We're still collecting REIT 1 and 2 in equal amounts, but I'm not.
First quarter percent,
Yes.
REIT 2 is the second quarter percent, and then the state's got a graduated rate based on the amount of the sale.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I can't remember either. Surprises a few sellers when they sell their real estate and find out that they're paying it.
So when will we know? We got to consult with Mr. Briggs again?
You know, we pretty much need to adopt the budget.
Okay.
Really, probably tomorrow. I'll have to make these changes in the budget and then work to get this adopted tomorrow. So really, I mean, if there's even someone with knowledge in the prosecutor's office today, it may be helpful to know whether we can do it or not.
What is the question?
Just what we need to do to make it happen, if just putting it in the budget, but then we also have to, it looks like, include it in our,
Yeah, it has to be in your capital facilities plan.
Yeah.
You can't use REIT money to hire somebody to do your plan. That's not allowed. So it's already got to be in the plan to use it. And then I think it's limited to, what, 25% of the REIT one?
so does that mean if we adopt?
I'm working from memory. I think that's pretty close, though. The point is, you can't do it unless you've got your plan already established and it's in there.
So if we adopted the budget with the intent to pay for this, but we didn't have it in our plan yet, we couldn't modify the plan to include it.
Remember, it's been a while since I've done anything with REIT.
Sounds like we got another job for that new position.
Yeah, I mean, this would be something that would fit into their scope. Yeah.
It's really something I'd be asking the auditor's office about.
Where is our auditor at? He was in here. Well, let's get back to the screen and what else have we got to go over here? And I guess, Tim, before we get too long here, what is the time for the meeting tomorrow?
9 o'clock.
9 in the morning, okay. That's in case we need the full day to get it done.
I think we would have scheduled some of these other meetings at 9 o'clock too, but there were other
Conflicts.
the commissioner's room had been
Board of
booked.
Equalization's taken this room up quite
Yes.
often. Okay, so
So we'll hold off on that one for the moment. And then, so the next one on the list is, this is one that was approved with, Resolution 2023-232. It's for a new gas heat package rooftop unit that's in the facilities budget. it doesn't sound like the money is going to be spent this year. And so essentially, which I had, in my projection for beginning fund balance, I had included as if they spent this. So my beginning fund balance is lower because of I was including this in it. So ultimately what I did was, my thought would be to increase beginning fund balance by this amount because they're not planning on spending it, and then funding it in the 2024 budget, since it sounds like it won't happen this year.
Comes a wash.
Correct.
Ordered, it just is that much lead time June.
Yes, you need to have it in the budget, it's a wash either way.
So let me ask you this, that right there, that new gas heat package rooftop, is that natural gas? Why are we going with the natural gas when the governor's waged war on it?
Replacing like for like.
And could this fall underneath that last REIT budget fund too?
Potentially.
I think it can, but I'm working from memory, but I believe.
We ought to look in that for REIT too, to see, get the opinion on that too while you're getting.
Facilities, upgrades,
Yes.
repairs, and maintenance, I think. Up to a percentage of Route 1, so I think it probably can.
I would agree. I think it does fall under the,
We got these funds, we might as well be using some of this money out of these funds, what it's intended to be used for. Now, if it creates a bunch of paperwork, we got another job for that new position. He's gonna be busy. I hope we get somebody hired in that position. So, where are we going from here?
is there a desire to, to try to get someone from the prosecutor's office that could speak to, requirements in here to make sure that we,
Well, I think the prosecutor's office and the auditor's office. Are you
so
getting them right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get a hold of Jeff.
just so we're not, moving on, some of the, so ultimately with the things that that's been adjusted, today, we're at a current, assuming all my numbers are correct, which I need to check and double check, but, I've got we're at a net surplus right now of 117,000 to the budget. And that does include, part of that includes, I made some adjustments to, we actually did have a sales tax has been trending down, but we did have a really good month for the month of November. So I had plugged in those into my forecasts, and ultimately, based on that, I made some adjustments to sales tax figures for 2024. Estimates increased a few different lines. One of them, juvenile corrections, increased at 100,000, criminal justice sales tax 20,000, and then another juvenile correctionals for 113,000. So the net of those, 233,000. I increased just based on trending. And I can, anyway, I had made some adjustments based on the trends, and so now we're ultimately at a net change to budget of 117,000 with the So we had these two discussion items on those facilities things, and then the only other one that had a maybe on it was I believe was the government affairs director position. We've got one no, and I think the discussion earlier was, okay.
Zero, on the government affairs, I was a yes, but the rest of us wanting to wait till the end of the consort study.
Okay, so yes on this one.
Yep.
And I know there was discussion of, was it 6 months to see if it's
6
bringing
months
in revenues, but
reevaluation.
ultimately I'd budget it at the full
year.
full year.
And if it doesn't come through by the end of the year, then we're going to do an analysis at 6 months and then a judgment at 1 year.
And on the commissioner's travel policy, I think for my district is 5,000. And I would actually like to have 4,000 of it removed with 1,000 remaining in case there was something that came up. But in the 3 years I've been here, I don't think I've spent $300 on travel, but if there was some reason, because I do want to go to the grant writing in January. So I don't know if the course is covered in travel, but I think it's about $400 per person if we can get 3 people to go per person. Otherwise, it's $500 each.
So there's those items, and then the only other, the one other thing that I had on here to discuss was there was a administrative leave fund that was created. I think maybe it was mid last year, with the intent to pay for cash outs of people when they leave employment. There was also some talk of potentially having availability to cash out some 40 or 80 hours of leave or whatever. I do not have that. I don't have that element of it in the 2024 budget for this fund at this point, just due to the financial constraints of the county. I thought that was probably not the best idea, but I do have it set up to fund for when people leave employment. And so I currently have $308,000 budgeted for next year. There's $154,000 that was received this year, and $154,000 next year that was from a local assistance and tribal consistency fund grant that we received from the feds. That just about the only restriction on it sounds like is it can't be used for lobbying. And so ultimately that was put into that fund. There was one payment one payment this year and one payment that's going to be received next year, total of $308,000. We've expended approximately $316,000 annually on people leaving the county. And so those are pretty much a wash for 308 versus 316,000. And so just thought I'd bring that up because that was a new fund that was created this year. And I think I said mid last year, but I don't know what year I'm in because I'm working on too many years at once.
So we're going to get a determination on this from the auditor. Are they coming, Mike? Mike, are they coming? The auditor and the
auditor is in a heavy conversation that I couldn't get him out of. And but I did have a chance to talk with Jeff Briggs, and he's quite certain that we could, the facilities with the fire alarm in the Justice Center could definitely be used for that. it fits into the scope. He's been looking at the stipulation just because we've been talking about it.
So both of those in the yellow, we can use that fund for?
Yeah, the life safety panel, and I don't know, I didn't specifically, I asked him about the panel. I didn't ask him about the gas heat, but if it's a capital improvement, I think the one caveat, if I'm remembering,
Are those two
yeah,
added
and I
up
don't
more
think that
than-
would have to be within our capital improvement plan because it fits within the scope of the Justice Center. So it's already kind of spelled out for us. But this is where the auditor's office would come in.
So those two added up is 350,000, and we had
2.4, I think.
What was it, Tim? How much did we have in that?
2.4.
2.4, so
So-
that's not using 25% of the fund.
No, and I did clarify that because I asked him, is that 25% a threshold of what you can spend?
In 1 year, was the way I interpret it.
Right. So we'd have to flesh that out a little bit more.
Yep.
I think the 25% was only on maintenance related, a maintenance side of it, not for strictly capital improvements. Once again, I'm not an expert on it, but I think this, when the reading of it, I think it talks about maintenance.
All right, so
Before we move too far, let's go back to travel for a minute. I suppose you might as well make all three of the commissioner travel amounts the same, so that
Commissioner Mullen was wanting 1,000 in there. Should I do 1,000 on each of the lines?
I'm only speaking for, or just tax funds, because REIT's got its own set of.
REIT, this is the one that was on, this is the REIT statute, I believe.
43040.
Yes, so on this section, may use the greater of $100,000 or 25% of available funds, but not to exceed $1 million per year from revenues collected under 8246010, which is REIT 1, for the maintenance of capital projects as defined in 8246010. So that sounds like just on the whatever maintenance is, and I'm not sure what the definition of maintenance is in this statute right off, but as far as capital project means, those public work projects of local government for planning, acquisition, construction, reconstruction, repair, replacement, rehabilitation, or improvement of streets, roads, highways, sidewalks, street and road lighting systems, traffic signals, bridges, domestic water systems, storm and sanitary sewer system, parks, recreational facilities, law enforcement facilities, fire protection facilities, trails, libraries, administrative facilities, judicial facilities, river flood control projects, waterway flood control projects.
sounds like it can.
Yeah, and then it talks about for any capital purchase identified in a capital improvement plan. And so, yeah, I think ultimately there was mention of budget, so I think it has to be included in the budget and then has to be in a plan as well for us to spend it.
That's cute.
Isn't it? Jaden. So then if that can come out of that fund, you can take it out of our budget. So if you take that out, how does that make us look?
These ones are not currently factored into anything. Well, I guess what it does is I can still add in the increase to beginning fund balance because, which I already have in this number. But then we wouldn't have to pay for this. So ultimately, we'd be at a surplus of 23,000.
It's awful tight. But we are on the plus side. So are we good till tomorrow then?
If there's no other decisions or anything else that the board wishes to go over, I can start working to get a balanced budget for tomorrow.
Do you need a cot?
I got my supply of Red Bull for him. I'm going to bring him all night.
All righty, if there's no more questions or comments, we will adjourn until 9 a.m. tomorrow.